Hello everyone, I am Bipin Joshi and you are watching the companion video to my article Create Class Decorators in TypeScript. In this video, you will learn what TypeScript class decorators are and how to create them. You will also learn how to override your class properties through decorators. Then you will learn how to add new properties to your class through decorators, and finally you will learn how to create decorator factories to create parameterized decorators. A TypeScript decorator is a construct that allows you to annotate and modify classes and class members. At code level, a decorator exists as a function. Once created, you can add them to classes, properties, accessors, methods and parameters. So here I have created a new ASP.NET Core project in Visual Studio. Now first thing I do is I will add a new folder to www root TypeScript. Now inside this TypeScript folder, I will first add TypeScript JSON configuration file, tsconfig.json. If you are following this article series, in the initial parts I explain what is the role of tsconfig file. So here we are adding tsconfig to our project. Why we need to add this file? Because decorators is an experimental feature, so you need to enable them first in your configuration file, and only then you can use them in your TypeScript code. So I will first add this file. Now inside this file, let me do some copy paste to save some time. Now inside this file, this particular setting is important. Here I set experimental decorators key to true, and so this is essential. Let me also install the NuGet package that Visual Studio is suggesting. You know about this package already if you are following the earlier parts. So let's wait for Visual Studio to add this package. So here you have this package. Okay, and even my tsconfig file is also ready. Let me save and close this file. Then I will add a TypeScript file. Let me call it class decorators.ts. This is our main TypeScript file, which will contain our TypeScript code, the decorators that we create. I will also add an HTML page class decorators.html. We'll use this page to basically test our decorators, whether our decorators are working as expected or not. And I will also add a style sheet file, stylesheet.css. This file simply contains some CSS classes. We'll add them later, that are used in the example that we are going to build in the TS file. So we have these files ready for us, and we can start our creating our class decorator. Since we are creating a class decorator, first of all we need to create some class so that we can decorate it with the decorator being created. So first of all I will create a new class. Let's say we want to create a class called employee. So this is the employee class. I will add a few properties in the employee class. The employee class in all has 4 properties: employee ID, full name. The employee ID stores the numeric employee ID, and full name, the full name of the employee. Now we have 2 other properties: employee ID underscore class and full name underscore class. These properties basically store name of a CSS class which is applied to the corresponding piece of data when it is displayed in the page. So these are basically going to be they are going to be CSS class names. So these are the 4 properties. I will then add a constructor. The constructor of the class accepts employee ID and full name as the parameter. Inside we simply assign these 2 properties with the appropriate values, and then we also set employee ID underscore class and employee ID and full name underscore class properties to class 1 and class 2 respectively. Class 1 and class 2 are the CSS classes. We will be creating these classes soon. So I add these 4 properties. I set these 4 properties. Let me also add a method called show details. I also added a method called show details. Show details method, first it picks up an element from the page whose ID is employee ID, and it sets the class name property of that element to employee ID underscore class, and then it sets the inner HTML of that element to the employee ID value. Same thing is done for full name. We pick an element with ID full name and set its class name property to full name underscore class, and we also set the inner HTML to the value of the full name property. So this is the show details method. So we added 4 properties. These properties are assigned some value in the constructor, and show details method displays those properties on the page. Let me save this class. We'll now add those CSS classes that we used. So if you remember, we already have added a style sheet file. So stylesheet.css is already there. I will simply put those classes inside. Class 1, class 2. There are 3-4 classes we create because later on we are going to change these classes through decorator. So we no need to go into details of these classes. They are simple CSS classes which simply set color and font and things like that for the HTML elements. So let me save the CSS file. I will also open the class decorator.html file. It's currently empty. We put a reference to the style sheet there in the head section. Then in the body onload, we call a function decorator demo. This is where an object of employee class is created. So we call this function. We are going to write this function in a minute. Inside there are 2 div elements with ID, employee ID and full name respectively. If you remember, in our code we are accessing those elements here. So those they are div elements on the page. and at the end you also have a script reference to class decorators .js file, the final result of our TypeScript code. So this is what we have. Now let me write this decorator demo function. So I will come back to below the employee class. I will write that decorator demo function. It essentially creates a variable emp and a new object of employee is created by passing employee id as 1 and some name, and then we call emp.showDetails so that the values are rendered on the page. So let me save this. Let me try running this page in the browser just to check whether everything is working as expected. So view in browser. So this is what you're going to get. You have employee ID and full name, and you can also see the CSS classes class 1 and class 2 getting applied to employee ID and full name respectively. And so our page works as expected. Now that our employee class is ready, let's create the decorator function. Let's create a decorator. So now have a look at this function theme. It's a function theme. Now this theme function is the decorator. So if you read the article, it is mentioned that decorators at code level, decorators are basically functions. So this is a theme function. The name, it's a developer defined name. So we are calling it theme. Now the theme function accepts a parameter. It accepts a parameter. Now whenever you are creating a class decorator, constructor of the class is passed as a parameter to the function. So here it will be the constructor of employee class that will get passed to the decorator function. Now don't bother much about this generic this syntax that you see here. It basically indicates that it puts a constraint that the functions that are received in the theme as a parameter, they are not only functions but they are constructors. Inside the theme function, you basically extend the constructor passed to it, and you override the employee ID underscore class and full name underscore class properties. Now if you remember, in employee class you are setting these properties to class 1 and class 2. Now here in the theme class decorator, you are changing their values from class 1 and class 2 to class 3 and class 4 respectively. So here we are basically overriding the values that are set in the constructor of employee class. So this is our decorator function, the class decorator function. Now let's apply this decorator to our employee class. To apply the decorator, you will go on the top of the employee class and then you will apply the decorator. So @theme, this is how you apply the decorator. Automatically the constructor of employee is passed as a parameter to the decorator function, and you are overriding these values. So if I run the page now, instead of showing employee ID in class with class 1 CSS class, it should now show it with class 3, and full name instead of class 2, it should now display it with class 4. Let's see whether that happens. So I saved it. Let me run the HTML page again. See, so here you can see the employee ID and full name. They are displayed with different CSS. Earlier we applied class 1 and class 2. Those values are now overridden with class 3 and class 4, and that happens through decorator, theme decorator. In this case, you are hard coding the values of employee ID class and full name class inside the decorator. Now you may want to pass these values when you apply, whenever you are applying the decorator. That means you want to create parameterized decorator. So let's see how that can be done, so that this hard coding can be avoided. So now we will create So here I create a function called theme with param. This function accepts an object which contains the settings, that is employee ID underscore class and full name underscore class. These values are no longer hard coded in our code. They are passed from the external world. Now inside theme with param function, we create the same decorator function, but instead of hard coding the values, we pick those values from the settings parameter. So employee ID underscore class is now picked from settings dot employee ID underscore class, and same way full name underscore class also comes from the settings object. Now this theme with params is basically a decorator factory, because inside you are creating the decorator and returning that decorator. So it's a decorator factory. So theme with param now supports supplying the parameters so that the values need not be hard coded. So this is theme with parameter. Let's apply it on our class. Theme with param. So our decorator, I change it from theme to theme with param, and I will now pass the values. So we passed these values through the parameter, and those are picked here. Let's see, let's confirm the working. Let me again run. So it correctly applies class 3 to employee ID and class 4 to full name. In the examples so far, you basically overridden the employee ID underscore class and full name underscore class values. If you want, you can also add a new property to your class through the decorator. That means employee, you can add a new property to the employee class through decorators. Let's see how that can be done. So I will come back to the first theme function, and in addition to these two, setting these two properties, I will also set border underscore class property. Now this property doesn't exist in employee class. this property doesn't exist in the employee class, so it's basically a new property you are adding through theme decorator. So I will come back to employee class and apply the theme decorator again. Now if at all you want to use this property, if at all you want to use border underscore class property in your employee, if you see the IntelliSense, it won't show you border underscore class property. That's because it is not part of your employee class as such. You are defining it through the decorator function, so it won't show in the IntelliSense. So here you see only those properties that are defined in the employee class. Now if you want to access this property, if you want to access border underscore class property, you need to write something like this. Let me write this code here. So basically we check whether the class under consideration has a property called border underscore class. So we check it through has own property method. While checking, we cast it to any and check whether border underscore class property exists. If it exists, we read the value of that property by again casting it to any and then border underscore class, and then we set it to the document elements class name property, so that the whole document is applied that particular class. And this class phi again is defined in the style sheet. So in addition to this is the class phi which defines the border of the page. So I added it. Let me run the page again. So here you can see the border getting rendered on the page because border underscore class property exists. I hope you found this video useful. Please subscribe to our channel and stay tuned with the latest additions.